Hi all, let's do another tour, this time of the Dutch defence, the main named variation. So this is on the improve, learn from the masters. You'll see a position explorer. So the Dutch defence, let's flip the board, d4, f5 signifies the Dutch defence. So tries to control the central square e4 directly with this pawn. Its reputation isn't as solid as the Sicilian defence. You might think it looks like the Sicilian on the other side of the board, but it's weakening the king. The king's going to be on this side of the board, and using the f-pawn is a little bit controversial as such, quite often. So the Dutch defence. Okay, I've got a guide I'm checking over here as well. So if I'm looking over there, I'm cheating. So I'm going to cheat now. d4, f5, knight c3, knight f6. G4 is the Spielmann gambit, not as in John Spielmann. There's another Spielmann from the past, a great player. Spielmann gambit. Now d4 f5 is the Queen d3 is the Manhattan variation. Very interesting, hitting that pawn. There's also, this can carry on actually here. This is the von Pretzel gambit. d4 f5 h3 is the Korchnoi attack. d4 f5 bishop g5 is a nuisance, which you have to know. The bishop g5 variation, that's really a nuisance. So if you know your opponent's playing the Dutch, this could be a good surprise weapon. I've fallen victim from Lauren da Costa. He smashed me quite quickly with this surprise weapon. So you've got to know this stuff as well. It's not just, yeah, you've got to know it. Now let's say g3. We'll go into knight f6, bishop g2, e6. Now knight h3 here is actually called the Blackburn variation. Knight getting points to play to f4 actually. It avoids e5 with tempo sometimes if that's coming later. So that's interesting. Now here, let's go back. d4, f5, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7, knight f3, c6. This gets a bit crazy. Castles. Now this is really, if you're adventurous, you'll play like this. Knight h6. It's got an idea that knight f7, maybe e5 later. So the Basman variation. I am Mike Basman. Apparently has played this maybe. So let's go back. d4 f5, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. Now, if white tries this knight h3, it's the Carlsbad variation, and that might be named after a tournament. Carlsbad, there's a famous Carlsbad tournament, I believe. d4 f5 e4 is the Staunton gambit. So he's the British guy that did the Staunton design of pieces. He invented this gambit as well. Did quite a lot for chess actually. I think he professionalized the game. I mean, I think also the chess clocks might have been his suggestion. He did quite a lot. But this is his contribution, Howard Staunton's contribution to opening theory. The Staunton gambit here. Now this is very interesting. d4 f5, c4, g6, knight c3, knight h6. Yeah, these the Bladel variation. I know you might think this is absurd, and but yeah, I think getting knight to f7 is actually kind of useful. In fact, there's a certain, I am playing this knight h3 to f2 in bullet chess quite frequently, but you can see it's quite a funny number of variations involving these kind of simply drunken knights here. If they go to f7, it does shield the diagonal a little bit as well actually, and support e5. It's not as bad as it might seem if it's going to come towards the center after. So the Bladel variation. Okay, so C4. Although the Dutch, yes, you're going to either win games or lose games more than draw, than say something more solid in general. Here, when White plays knight c3, that's the Rubinstein variation. Now c4, e6, and then e4 is a Staunton gambit, deferred by one move. Now let's go on. D4, f5, g3, e6, bishop g2, bishop b4 check. We're going into the Dutch-Indian variation with bishop b4 check. If bishop d2 and the bishop goes back, this has been played, I think, by Alekhine. Alekhine variation, Dutch-Indian Alekhine variation. There's also another Alekhine variation, d4, f5, c4, knight f6, g3, e6, bishop g2, bishop e7, and now knight f3, castles, white castles, now knight e4. This is another Alekhine variation. They might have played this in a game. We'll go back all the way, d4, f5, back there, c4, knight f6, g3, e6, bishop g2. If black sets up the pawns soon, let's see, bishop e7, knight f3, both sides castle, but black now sets up the pawns like this. We're going to the Stonewall variation. I guess Stonewall, that does sound solid. And funny enough, with knight c3, it says with knight c3, Dutch Stonewall with knight c3. Okay, now there's also some variations on this. Instead of knight c3, a move popularized by Botvinnik, the Botvinnik variation here, to try and exchange off the dark square bishops and weaken black further on the dark squares. We've also got let's see, knight c3. Let's go back to the knight c3 move for a moment. c6, and we'll continue this for a moment. Queen c2, queen e8, bishop g5 is the Chekhov variation. And one more for the road is basically on knight c3. Let's go back to knight c3. So white played knight c3 there. No, let's rewind further. There is one more. Bishop e7, knight f3, castles, d6, knight c3 here, queen e8 is the Ilnik-Ganevsky variation. And that's just a little tour of Dutch defense names variations. By the way, this is admin mode, where I can enter some notes here, but you'll just see the text mode. So yeah, just a quick reminder of the main named variations in the Dutch defense in terms of established kind of ECO codes. Okay, comments, questions, likes, appreciated. Thanks very much.